Hello, my name is James Sanders. I will be telling you about the inspection and function and safety checks for a Sig Sauer P365. It's my everyday carry, so I felt pretty comfortable doing this. Basically just followed a step-by-step. As you can see in the video, there is no external safety or trigger safety. However, if it did have a manual safety, I would obviously check that. So let's walk through this just a little bit. So the first step is to make the firearm safe. This means removing any feed source. As you can see, I removed the magazine and I am now clearing the chamber. I've inspected the chamber, it was clear. Continued to rack it several more times. I am now physically inspecting to make sure that I cannot feel a magazine or see round in the chamber, feeling with my fingers to make sure everything is indeed empty. It sounds and feels pretty stupid until you understand why you're doing it. I am removing the feed source, so the reason you physically inspect it is just an additional safety measure in case you missed anything the first time. So I've removed the ammunition from the feed source. This will allow me to safely carry out these function checks. I am also removing the live ammunition from my workspace simply to alleviate any kind of accidental live fire situation. So clearly the magazine is empty. You can see the follower. There is no magazine in the well. I'm showing the camera just to show you guys what's going on with that. I've locked the slide to the rear, and now we're going to start doing the function checks. So the first thing you check is the unlocking. When the breech unlocks in this particular firearm, this is where the barrel tilts down after the bolt face disengages from the chamber and the breech face. You should feel a light to moderate tension when you do this. It shouldn't take a real heavy pull to get those unlocked. As you can see, I'm going to send in the slide forward. I'm slowly doing this to listen to it to make sure that everything's okay. That was the breech unlocking, just that little jolt, maybe a half a centimeter or so. Listening, feeling for any grinding, any kind of irregularities. Now in this same stroke, you feel the firearm cock. So you should feel the cocking mechanism with a striker-fired weapon, which the P365 is. You feel the striker going over the sear, and the sear will engage to keep the striker from going back forward. I'm visually looking at the breech unlock. I had to do this several times because this is a fairly new gun. I haven't had any problems with it. I've kept it pretty clean. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything because it was so smooth in its operation through this function. So now I'm feeling for the cocking piece. I've focused on the breech face. I'm trying to feel it cock and the striker go over the sear. Trying to do this extremely slowly to get all the feel that I can. As you can clearly see, my finger is off the trigger as I am not intending to shoot anything. So that was me resetting the striker. So here I'm going to put the feed source, which is empty, into the magazine well. I'm going to lock the slide to the rear unintentionally the first time, as an empty magazine will automatically do that with this firearm. So I send the slide forward slowly, looking, feeling for any hang-ups on the magazine well, looking for any hang-ups on the follower, on the magazine, inspecting. I do not possess any dummy rounds, but if I did, this is where I would be feeding them in manually, checking to see that they're feeding properly, checking to see that the clearances are okay, and making sure there's no issues with feeding, chambering, or ejecting. So as I don't have any dummy rounds to check the feed, extracting, ejecting process, I am simply checking the functionality of the firearm. That is the trigger pull to the brake. It has a 2-pound initial pull with a 4-pound trigger. And as you can see here, I am pulling the trigger. That is the 4-pound pull. And if I had dummy rounds, I would then keep the trigger depressed, manually operate the action, ejecting the previous dummy round, chambering the next dummy round, resetting the fire control group, which is what I'm doing here. And as you can see, as I release the trigger, that resets the fire control group. And at this point, you hit the firearm with a hammer. You hit the firearm with a nylon or rawhide hammer to simulate dropping. I used my hands because I don't have those particular tools. The firearm functioned perfectly, passed all these safety checks. After this point, it would be moving on to the test firing portion. But as it stands, this firearm did not need any repairs. Probably could use another cleaning. But the function check and the inspection went very well.